Hi there, welcome. This is the Kelly's Astrology podcast, where you can find insight, guidance, and understanding through astrology. I'm Kelly, and I'll be your host. Hey there, everyone, and welcome to this week's show. Since we are about to start Gemini season 2025, and because this year's Gemini season is shaping up to be a cycle that really expresses some of the best of what Gemini and Mercury have to offer, I wanted to make that a focus of this week's show. I've really been thinking a lot about the last week of May and the first week of June as being super Gemini, like really super mercurial in their tone, in their theme, in their quality of energy. So that's last week of May, first week of June, 2025. And that's really unique to some of this year's transits. So I wanted to talk about why. Which basically means today's show is going to be a deep dive on Gemini with a bit of a look at Mercury. And I'm going to share some of the highlights of Gemini season 2025. Before we dive in, I wanted to let you know about my new online astrology course, which is all about zodiacal releasing. This is an ancient timing technique which will teach you how to work out major chapters in your life. So if you're interested, pop over to my website, kellysastrology.com. You can find out more, or you can sign up today. All right, so coming back to our Gemini-inspired show. First things first, we have the sun moving into Gemini on Tuesday, May 20th. And the sun will be in Gemini for about a month until it moves into Cancer on June 20th. So Gemini season is the time when the sun is in the sign of Gemini. And in 2025, it's approximately May 20th to June 20th, give or take a little bit of an adjustment depending on where you might be, but that's Eastern time for sure. So there we have our Gemini season. It's this 4-week period of time. It happens every year, just like we're wrapping up Taurus season. And after Gemini season, we will have Cancer season. Because we do have Gemini season every year, you might be wondering why I'm so interested in Gemini season 2025. So there's a couple of technical reasons. The first is that while we have the sun in Gemini this year, we're also going to have periods of time where both Mercury and Jupiter will be in Gemini. We will also not have, for most of Gemini season 2025, we will not have that overcoming square from Saturn in Pisces to planets in Gemini. So we've got this expanded, amplified quality of Gemini energy this year, thanks to Jupiter being in Gemini. We also have the kind of clarity and the connectivity and that kind of brilliant insight of Mercury and Gemini coming through as well. Now, to be fair, there was about 2 weeks in June of 2024 where we had a similar combination. We had Mercury, the Sun, and Jupiter all in Gemini. And so you might notice some echoes from then reappearing now in this late May, early June period. One of the big differences from that Super Gemini period in June of 2024 with this year's 2025 version of the Super Gemini season is Saturn. And the difference is that in 2024, we had Saturn in Pisces making that overcoming square to those planets in Gemini. Whereas for most of Gemini season 2025, and certainly the part I'm really going to hone in on, Saturn will be in Aries. And so we don't have that intense square from Saturn to planets in Gemini. Saturn in Aries is its own separate transit. So we'll talk about that, in a future episode. For now, it's good for us to know that something that has created pressure around planets in Gemini for a couple of years is not going to be there for Gemini season 2025. And what that means is that over this 4-week period from May 20th, well, it'll be from May 24th, which is when Saturn goes into Aries, until June 20th with the sun in Gemini, we're really going to get a lot more of these bubbly, social, and buzzy vibes of Mercury, the sun, and Jupiter and Gemini coming forward. So the Gemini emanations are going to be super strong this year. So we've got that Sun in Gemini period for 4 weeks from May 20th to June 20th. And then inside that 4-week long period, we have a shorter period, which is what I really have my eye on. And this shorter period is when Mercury will be in Gemini, and it runs from May 25th to June 8th. So it's about 2.5 weeks inside the regular Sun in Gemini cycle. And when I really stop to focus, it is this shorter period with Mercury in Gemini, which is one of its home signs, that totally stands out. To me, it's got like bright lights, look over here, special time ahead. This is a little bit of a unique expression of Mercury energy through that lens of the sign of Gemini. So Mercury is going to be in one of its best signs for this 2.5-week period. That's from May 25th to June 8th. And that makes that time frame generally great for things like socializing, brainstorming, interacting with others for all kinds of reasons, as well as updating or improving anything to do with technology, and on improving and upgrading your communication skills. There is such a focus on language with Mercury and Gemini. How will I share my ideas with others? How can I connect with others so that we have clarity and we have understanding? And Mercury and Gemini can help with improving a lot of those pieces. Mercury in Gemini will definitely get the brain buzzing, and you will be kind of alive with ideas. You're going to be more curious about a wide variety of possibilities, and certainly more open to connecting with others, whether that's having a conversation, talking about something, learning about something, sharing something that you know. Gemini as a sign is super social, super interactive. I'm going to talk about some of the and it's really expressive. It's more extroverted. I'll talk about some of the technical reasons why a little later in today's show. So Mercury in Gemini is definitely a cycle that supports mingling and meeting new people from all walks of life, whether it's to do with your career, your personal life, your family life, your living situation, your big goals, your financial dreams, your health and wellness areas of interest. Mercury in Gemini is just about gathering a lot of new information. I always think about Mercury in Gemini as like a bee or a butterfly in the garden, doing that role of pollination where we are, helping things come together and we're moving necessary inputs from one place to another. What's also interesting about this 2.5-week period of Mercury in Gemini, it's that it corresponds with the last part of the longer Jupiter in Gemini cycle. So just as Mercury is getting ready to leave Gemini around June 8, so is Jupiter, which is almost as though the Jupiter and Gemini cycle is going to go out with a bit of a bang as Mercury kind of joins Jupiter in Gemini, as if to sort of help make sure that you've taken action on all your big ideas from the last 12 months. That Mercury combination with Jupiter and Gemini, which is basically those same dates, May 25th to June 8th, that's going to be a time where you want to make sure you've got all your plans and schedules, all the logistical matters for the next few months, where you've got them all organized and that you've got the supports in place that are going to help you succeed in the months to come. One way you can really attune to this heightened Gemini Mercury energy is to think about the Gemini part of your personal birth chart. Think about the topics of the house where Gemini is for you personally, and see whether you need a kind of, working bee or a flurry of activity to get a bunch of things done in a short space of time. And that space of time from May 25th to June 8th is when you can kind of go for gold, as we say in Australia. Just absolutely go for it. You've got Jupiter there, ruled by Mercury, who happens to be there as well, enhanced by the emphasis of the Sun, who is also there, without the restraining quality of Saturn. So we are planting seeds, we are making connections, we're kind of throwing down those invitations and plans for the future. We're getting a lot going, specifically about the Gemini part of our chart and lives. When I think about the Gemini part of my life, relative to my birth chart, it is so busy at the moment. We have all these things going on. I've got experts coming in to help. We're getting so much done. And it really feels like the culmination of the last 12 months. So if Gemini is the 10th house of career for you, then, the working bee flurry of activity is around work and career matters. If Gemini is second house of money, income, cash flow, budgeting, that's what you're going to focus on over these couple of weeks. You're going to focus on all of your personal finance goals. You're going to update all your money documents. You're going to have all those conversations relating to income and saving and managing debt or investing that you want to have. So you just want to think about how you can go all in, update, improve, organize, like lock in opportunities around the topics of the Gemini part of your chart in this 2.5-week period. Now, as an air sign, Gemini is kind of known as a humane sign. And what that means is that as planets activate Gemini, we're really called to remember our humanity. You might be reminded of how important being with other people in real time is. So whether it's in real time or in real life, that real, not like asynchronous connection. We want that real, I'm here, you're here, we're having the conversation now. We're not voice noting or messaging back and forward. We're actually hearing each other's voice if we're not being physically present in the same space. So that idea of the social community piece of Gemini, I think, is really important. Gemini is also a sign that is connected to the intellect, to the mind, to human intelligence, if you like. And so logic and reasoning and rational thought can be emphasized while Mercury is in Gemini. So as we move through this super Gemini period, you might find that you want to stimulate your brain with higher quality sources of information or higher quality interactions. You want to talk about more substantive topics, more interesting topics, a wider variety of topics. You don't want to get stuck in the same grooves, having the same conversations, sharing and hearing the same opinions as always. You want to bring some fresh knowledge, fresh ideas, fresh information into the mix. Imagine you've been like that bee or butterfly in the garden. You have been gathering and learning, and you want to have those kind of fruitful exchanges of information and ideas. Those when somebody else shares their thoughts and it prompts new thoughts for you. So this focus on the intellect, using the mind, activating the brain, getting your thinking capacity going is going to be a real focus with this super Gemini period. You might find that you're really craving mental stimulation, maybe through learning or writing or reading. There's not as much opportunities to really use our brains these days. There's a lot of computers and involvement and internet and technology. Let's see what we can do when we use the power of our own brains. I think that's going to be a great thing to come back to with this super Gemini period. So Gemini is also known as a loud-voiced sign. So in some of our ancient kind of assessments or typing of the signs, they all get this kind of volume control. From the water signs, which are the quietest, they have what's called a mute designation, which means planets in water signs are less talkative, more thoughtful or reflective, or maybe for writing rather than speaking. But Gemini as a loud voice sign, there's only 3 loud voice signs, and they are definitely about talking. They are about expressing. They're about being loud or being bold, being brave. So that extroverted energy of Gemini, it helps expressiveness. It helps you articulate. It helps you say out loud the ideas and the interests and the curiosities that have captured your attention. So over these next few weeks, if it's on your mind, you're really going to want to say it out loud to others and make that a priority. So we're really focusing on verbalizing things, not just thinking about things or mulling things over. As a mutable sign, Gemini is also known as a doubled-bodied sign, and all the mutable signs share this doubled-bodied quality, and that indicates 2 or more. So Gemini is never happy with just one book to read, just one career path if it's your 10th house, just one home if it's your 4th house, just one friend if it's your 11th house. We want doubles or multiples of things when we are in peak Gemini season. And that can be why when there is a lot of Gemini activity, you might find yourself doing twice as much as usual, or even 3 times as much, or 4 times as much. We are not interested in half measures with planets in Gemini. You know, every idea can seem interesting and every new possibility is intriguing. So it does have this quality of like scattering or expanding and extending your interests. And while that can bring a lot of new input and interesting, experiences and encounters your way, there is a caution that we have to keep in mind for such an adaptable time period. And that is that we may get so excited about so many new things that we're actually losing interest before we're following through and finishing. So just being aware of that edge of, am I so scattered that I'm no longer doing anything useful here? Or am I just scattered and just wide enough that I'm gathering in things that are interesting that is still within my capacity to kind of digest or integrate? So we want to go a little wider than normal. We just don't want to go so wide that we kind of can't handle it, if you like. So just being aware of not spreading yourself too thin. And one of the ways that I have found really helpful when we have these like peak Gemini periods is I come back to the Gemini part of my birth chart and I think about that as like a lens through which to focus my energy during this time period. So instead of trying to do things in all areas of my life, I just think, what are the topics of the Gemini house in my chart? And how can I go all in that part of my life for this time frame? One thing I also think it's important to note is that while Mercury is buzzing through Gemini this year, it does stay in that hidden under the beams or even the combustion state for most of the time. Mercury is super close to the sun while Mercury is in Gemini. And it's important to keep in mind that the planet Mercury is doing a lot of things, but in kind of specific settings with that criteria. And before we get into breaking that down, it's also good to remember that Mercury was the original planet associated with transformation. And that's due to, in part, Mercury's tendency to move in and out of visibility. So it's constantly kind of undergoing what looked like these periodic transformations: morning star, evening star, visible, invisible, forward motion, backward motion. So that quality of flux, which goes with Mercury, also has this association with transformation. We're not staying in the one state. We're not steady and consistent, but we are able to evolve and transform under the auspices of Mercury. So with Mercury hidden from sight, but being in a sign of its rulership, we've got this quality of Mercury, in the intangible realms while in Gemini. And that brings up qualities of inner transformation for this time. You might find that taking some time or space to tap into your inner wisdom, or to explore mystical matters, or even some of those wisdom topics that you've always wanted to dive into, whether it's philosophy or Buddhism or astrology or whatever it might be, such a wide range of topics. You may be more obsessed with that now. So mystical matters might appeal more than usual. And there is a kind of alchemical, almost shape-shifting quality around Mercury through this Gemini season in 2025 that might help you make a more substantial change as well. So if there's something that you do want to transform, if it's like this and you want it to become like that, the energy of Mercury during this heightened Gemini season will help support things becoming something different from what they were. Now, during this overall Gemini season, this period in late May, early June of 2025, there are some specific highlights, and I'm just going to kind of call them out now for you. So I am really watching the new moon in Gemini, which is May 26th or 27th, depending on where you are. That is like super Gemini new moon because we have Mercury and Jupiter in Gemini with the sun and moon. Particularly though, if I had to call out just one thing for this whole 2.5 week period, it is the Mercury cazimi with the Sun in Gemini on May 30th. And that day is excellent for accessing insight and wisdom, for kind of calling on your higher knowledge. It's also a great day for seeding new concepts and ideas for the future. In addition, I've got my eye on June 5th when Mercury and Gemini will work with Mars in Leo, and that's generally a great day for decision making. And also June 8th, I've got my eye on. That's when Mercury will unite with Jupiter in Gemini right before they both change signs. And that's going to be a great day, kind of what are the last messages that I need to hear about Jupiter and Gemini? What are the things to remember about upgrading or improving the Gemini part of my chart and life? And even though Jupiter won't be in Gemini, after June 9, the plans that you lock in with Mercury and Jupiter together in Gemini, they can still get done after that time frame. So there's some dates and things to keep in mind. And hopefully this has given you a bit of a sense of the vibe of Gemini season, but even more so that 2.5 week period when Mercury is in Gemini with the Sun and with Jupiter. So the cosmos is about to offer up loads of food for thought, bright ideas, new possibilities, as well as precious gems of wisdom. So if you need a fresh approach to the topics of the Gemini part of your chart, or you're simply ready to use your brain, learn something new, or focus on enhancing your social and community networks, Gemini season 2025 has got your back. This is a wonderful time for upgrades, improvements, and moving on from the past. So let me know, what are you buzzing with excitement around during Gemini season 2025? Can you see the progress in terms of upgrades or improvements around the topics of the Gemini house in your chart? Let me know in the comments below. If you're interested to learn that technique of zodiacal releasing, I hope to see you in class real soon. You can find out more over at kellysastrology.com. Thanks so much for joining me for another show. I will see you all next time. Bye for now.